I think we need to look at tools like AI or even ChatGPT or any other tool as enablers as to how that purpose, that soul can actually be customized and personalized for a consumer, which then creates relevance.
People who are willing to go really high on the job that they're doing, create very distinct, very differentiated work, will survive.
This question is for all of you. Given that new technologies like AI and automation have rapidly grown, especially since the launch of ChatGPT, even before that, we had no-code tools coming in. Do you think it's becoming more difficult to have a brand voice and in this age of chatbots, or is it as easy? What is your approach when you look at that? Any of you can go.
Firstly, it's wonderful to be a part of this discussion. So thanks for the invitation. I think these are very exciting times that we live in, and AI and all the emerging technologies have opened up a world of possibilities for brands and marketers. So you mentioned the risk of brand losing its voice, losing its character, or losing its ability to connect deeply with consumers. I think it completely depends on what do you hold as starting principles and what do you hold at the center of what you do. If you hold your consumer insights, tensions, things you're trying to solve, and your brand, what is the role that your brand wants to play in the world at the heart of everything you do, and you then view technology as one of many tools, then I think you'll be in a good place. And I think it can unleash, because the power of the technology is such, it can unleash amazing work. But it has to start with the consumer and what role the brand wants to play in the world at the heart of things. If you start the other way around, let me do something fancy with fancy technology, then the technology overrides and the brand and what you're trying to do with the consumer, that can take a backseat, and then you definitely run the risk. I think the way the industry is going, and I can speak for just overall marketing communications, I'm seeing a lot of exciting work in India, abroad, evolve, which is high tech, but where the brand voice comes out with greater power, because definitely technology gives you the power to create unimaginable sort of delightful solutions to consumer problems, which was not possible maybe in an earlier era.
If I could twist that question a little bit for everybody, imagine your scenario: a brand like Whole Truth or any other chocolate brand takes those insights, ideas, which are pretty public on some level, puts them on a generative app, and within 5 minutes creates a campaign which was not possible earlier. Won't a lot of those campaigns become very similar? That's the problem with generative AI and stuff. Are we losing that voice, or is it still or is it getting better because of personalization?
I don't think, if you think about AI, there are two parts of AI, right? AI can mimic creativity. But it's fundamentally different from human creativity. The reason to why human creativity exists is because inspiration and insight comes from our lived experiences, right? To what Siddhant talked about, which is getting the user's voice and getting those insights from there. So what AI can do, which you exactly said, is mimic patterns, right? It takes in from data and creates that piece. So when we think about AI, I think the one big piece that it does open up is that it opens up the creative possibility of scale, right? Because then the grunt work of what we could typically do can happen through AI, because that mimic pattern can happen. But the core truth of the campaign still comes from human. It comes from that core belief of what we can bring to life over there.
I'm inclined to have the same opinion, right? And you used this word earlier. The connection between a brand and a consumer comes from the brand's purpose, its character, its soul, right? And I think we need to look at tools like AI or even ChatGPT or any other tool as enablers as to how that purpose, that soul can actually be customized and personalized for a consumer, which then creates relevance. How can we leverage that to create innovation and thereby look at how we are able to actually engage with consumers in a more meaningful and impactful way? So tools these tools, actually end up becoming enablers or aids. And that's how we should look at leveraging them. I don't think it's about turning around a campaign in 5 minutes. That is an added benefit if that is the need. But I think we should look at how we can leverage them to add more fuel to what we're already doing.
So the overall, it's a plus, according to both of you.
Without a doubt.
I would tend to agree most part of this, but I also feel that yes, it's a tool and it all depends on how the brand would use it. It's probably every craftsman would have a hammer. How does he go about crafting that piece of wood, right? And the way, the direction you give it is what forms the final output, and that's what makes it that much more interesting. And give you an example as well, right? Almost a lot of brands were onto this whole generative AI image generator, which was doing the rounds, and a lot of brands latched onto that. But there was one brand which came in, which was Heinz, and I don't know if you've seen the work, but they did this really cool campaign where you said, if you say ketchup, it's Heinz, and they just used the DALI to prove the point, right? Now, to be cheeky enough to do that is that brand, right? So they used the same tool which maybe 6 other or 10 other brands had used before them, but the way they used it made the brand that much more relevant and that much more correct for that particular piece, right? So I think it's the way you use it. It's going to be very different. It's going to be very powerful for sure, but I don't see there being too much of an overlap if you use it correctly.
I haven't seen AI create a great brief for the agency, by the way.
Not even Bard. No.
For a
It's
brand's
learning.
purpose.
It's a training experiment, as
Okay,
you
okay,
said.
fair enough. Okay, so now let's go on to the second part, which for me is, how do you see teams evolving? Okay, there are obviously some pluses, there are some minuses, and when I talk about this, I'm not just talking about AI, I'm also talking about low code tools. That's been a part. There were some campaigns which were being presented which talked a lot about growth hacking, which was not something we looked at in marketing earlier. Marketer or an agency did not do growth hacking. Now there's separate agencies who do growth hacking. I'm not sure how many marketing teams in-house have growth hacking. Now, all these kind of things, AI, low code, no code, etc., are they going to change the role both on the client side and on the agency side? How do you see that happening? And any specific examples you see? Anybody from the panel? It's open to everybody.
I can take a crack at it. It's related to the first question. If you, maybe in my childhood, because when that gentleman played the flute, I started thinking about my childhood. A lot of grinding was done at home on the stone, right? And then at some point we bought mixer grinders. Now you have a blender, you have a juicer. That essentially means you do more of that in less time, right? Any of these things coming in is probably going to get you to do more, like scale. You spoke about scale. You're going to do more of it. You're going to do a better job. It's just going to make the human element a lot more sophisticated. If anything, it is going to take away those things that in any case we don't want to do today, and probably machine or AI, whatever you want to call it, is going to replace it. It's the exact same thing that a keyboard did to scribes who used to write with hand. Then there was a keyboard that came in, or a mixer grinder did to the old stone mortar and pestle. It's exactly the same thing. But it didn't mean that we stopped making idlis and chutney at home. We just made more of it. We made more varieties. That's exactly what's going to happen. And something like creativity will explode. Why will it not? Because the last 10-15% that nobody wants to do is now taken care of by a machine because it can.
But that's the overall level. When we look at the human level, specific roles. So a few years back, Monica, we were talking about, we have common connection, Quasar. I remember when we used to make websites, there was design, there was HTML, there's all of that. Now you go on to a low code tool, 5 minutes, that's ready. And landing pages, campaigns can be launched automatically. Sooner or later, somebody who's doing that work, their job will come into question. And agency roles are evolving. So there are senior agency people who are specialized in that. So on a very practical level, 100 field level, or I think all of us on the same page, it's a plus and there's a minus. But do you see certain roles very specifically changing, evolving, adding, subtracting, whatever?
So certain roles, yes, right? To what Vinod was saying is that, let's assume data analysis, which we do typically need for a lot of the work that we're doing, the metrics that we're looking at, all the analysis. You don't need 5 people to do that anymore. So it's a reduction of the role versus not having that role, because you still need someone who'll interpret it in the way you want to do it. So that's one. The other thing that it starts leading to is the skilling that needs to change, because you were then technically only skilling for grunt work. Now, because the grunt work is getting done, you need to upskill yourself. So it's a change. And constantly, everyone has been saying every time there's a revolution, things will away. We tend to adapt and we tend to evolve around that piece.
Do you see certain job roles in more of a threat?
I think if anyone's doing day in and day out the same kind of monotonous work and automated work, yes. But we haven't seen that in marketing. In marketing, we typically haven't seen that particular piece. In fact, with AI coming in, there's more demand for having more specificity of that skill set. Till 6 months back, I didn't know how to do prompt engineering, right? I have to now do that. So there are skill sets that are starting to get, and we do need those people with those skill sets.
And the same technology is also making upskilling easier. Right? There are so many examples of someone who started as a security guard somewhere, went through a certification, and now is doing a completely different job, right? So while on one hand, I do agree that some jobs as we know them today will probably become redundant, if that's a word I can say. But it technology also lends itself to letting people upskill of their own accord. And if that opportunity is present, it's for us to pick that up.
I hold a different opinion actually. Let me go strong on this and tell you that yes, jobs
Definitely.
are in super danger. Anybody who's doing mediocre work, be very aware that this is coming your way. A chat GTP can give you really good copy. So a copywriter who's not upskilled themselves, who's not willing to modify, transform with the times, be with it with their craft in a way which is distinct and different and unique, you will be absolute. And that goes for any kind of art form, any kind of job that people are doing. People who are going to be willing to adapt to the changing landscape, people who are willing to upskill themselves, people who are willing to go really high on the job that they're doing, create very distinct, very differentiated work, will survive.
On the plus side, I'll also say that it's also creating a lot of job of which related to tech experts where they historically weren't there as in that much numbers. So as an example, on the creative agency side, we have right now in every campaign is deploying some kind of tech. So you have tech experts also coming in. Scope of work is gone up. Those teams have. I'm sure it's the case with Leo Burnett as well. It's the case with the agencies that we work with. And on our side also, over time, as the complexities increase, we also need people who can have in-depth knowledge of those competencies. So I see marketing organizations also having more and more tech expertise, certain individuals getting hired for that expertise alone. Also, it will require the ecosystem to evolve. So having deeper partnerships with partners. Of course, as a marketer, you have a media agency, you have a advertising agency, but again, deeper partnerships with partners such as Meta, Google, which we've had over time. I think the scope of areas where we can collaborate increases. That also creates many opportunities and jobs that help us in that regard.
Interesting. Actually, was coming. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'll try and summarize the 2 points that you said. And I fundamentally believe change is constant. And if it is constant, you either be in front of it or you track it. And if you're going to be in tracking it, then to your point, mediocrity will not take you anywhere. So you have to lead it. And I think in order to lead it, evolution of whether it is technology, whether it is war, whether it's human beings, has gone through the same. So when, just to give an analogy, when Babur first invaded India, he came with horses and elephants, right? Somebody was driving them. Today, when Russia invaded Ukraine, somebody is sitting behind the drone and still driving the drone, right? Technology is evolved from horses to drones, but there's somebody who is leading it, who's working on it, understanding it to be able to implement it. And if we as an industry are not willing to do that, or not being working with that evolution, because consumers will adapt it. Consumers adopted internet faster than the industry thought they will adopt it. Consumers adopted smartphone faster than we thought they'll adopt it. And we've always been tracking that as an industry. Here is an opportunity where we know it is coming. We know we've learned from internet with Apple, with the iPhones, smartphones, with metaverse. We've seen that evolution of the last 20 years that it is going to happen. How soon as an industry can we put our practices in place and start working with it rather than without it? And I think also it comes with these challenges. Governance is a challenge, trademark, IP, policy, etc. It's going to take time. Sam Birdman sat in the US Senate and said, please build governance for ChatGPT. He's asking for governance not for ChatGPT. He's asking for governance for AI because none exists today. It's going to take time. Upskilling doesn't necessarily happen to the industry people, to the creative person, etc. But upskilling also needs to happen to the lawyers. We have to work on the governance structure, the policy structure, the trademark association. Everybody has to work through it. So it's not a singular responsibility. In the spirit of what Siddharth said, it's getting the entire industry together. Industry here is not just marketing, but the ancillary services of marketing also. But most importantly, I think it starts with you. If you believe in it, you have to practice it. You have to do it, whether it's learning the prompt engineering, whether it's learning fundamentals of AI, whether it's whatever it is. If you do not, you are going to be left behind. And that's the harsh reality. If you don't like it, there's another place for you. But if you like it, then you better be with it.
That brings me to my last question, which is that if it's all on you, and since you all are senior marketing leaders, the idea is you have to keep up with your job, do really well at it, take care of health, happiness, manage all of that, and keep upskilling yourself and look towards the future. So today we have a creative director meeting, a sales head, and probably two different ideas were exchanged here. So you have to upskill not only in your domain because marketing is getting more horizontal, but probably learn a little about his domain also. How are you all managing that? Or you saying, hustle culture, let's get lost. I will live my life. I am secure enough. So it was any of you. So how are you managing it? Because I have a challenge. I'm having a challenge. So this is for all of you. How are you all dealing with it?
I mean, truth of the matter is life will get more complex
Yeah.
as time passes on. Imagine just in advertising, marketing overall, like you go back 15 years and you just had to focus on TV thematics. It was done. Then digital came in with all the different possibilities, different platforms, how you use them, that added complexity massive. And now you have different technologies. So you have to stay upbeat with all that is happening. One silver lining is this: all of this is very interesting stuff. If you were deeply passionate about marketing back in campus days, all you through your career, you will find natural inclination to learn from it and to actually get better at it and leverage it in your work. So that will at least take away the taxing element or happiness element of it because you're happy with the work. If you're not, the truth of the matter, I don't have a solve for it. Life will get more complex. You'll have to be aware of so many more things. It is not just the tech angle that you have to be aware of. There are so many, as mentioning, the legal complications, so many gray areas that new tech throws up. So it will be more complex. If you love it, learn it, and you'll excel at it. If you don't, then there'll be others who do it better.
Yeah.
So can you all tell me somebody from the agency side, client side, from an upskilling side, how is your organization or organizations like yours, client side, agency side, and upskilling? How has your experience been with the trying to devote time for upskilling? Because end of the day, we have to do our jobs. We are not Bill Gates. We can take 2 weekends off, 2 weeks off, and go to learn and just forget everything. Yeah.
So, for example, I'll share with you at MMA, it's a 180 people organization. Everybody is mandated to do one course a month on AI. It's a mandate. If you don't do it at the end of the calendar year, it will show on your review. As simple as that. Now it is for the person to do how easy or difficult that course is. Because it is also very important, because if all of those people don't do the courses, for example, if I don't do the course, I can't sit on this panel and have a meaningful discussion and not make a fool of myself. It's as simple as that. To have a conversation, you need to understand it. And we are doing it. And it has to be part of everybody's life, I think.
Tanya, have you done the course? Are you pressing? Okay. Yeah.
They have all done it. I can
I
assure
have,
you.
I have a possibly unpopular opinion. I don't think upskilling can be regimented. I don't think upskilling should be regimented. Whenever we got into organizations or people come into our teams, You put them through this whole roster. It's like training lions in the circus.
Yeah,
Right?
that
Put
I
them
have.
through a whole roster. I don't think that is upskilling. I think it's like motivation. You have to create an environment where people feel inspired to go out and read more, go out and find more, go out and pursue that knowledge. And within that, to his point earlier, there will be people, unfortunately, who will be surrounded or who would fall prey to mediocrity, and they may not be able to. Idea is to provide that opportunity rather than feed it.
Right.
I don't think we are in the world anymore where you go, you feed someone, massage their neck so that it goes into the stomach. You put it out there, inspire people, give them the platform, and then some will pick it up and some will not, and we should be okay with that.
And are companies enabling people with time during paid time to do this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, Ola,
Absolutely.
yeah. Just one agency. Yeah.
To add to what he was saying, I think just creative folks generally, and I'm not saying only creative agency folks, but just generally people who are related to marketing are generally have a creative bent of mind. And I feel we're all slightly insecure. We always continuously feel that somebody else is going to do something better than us. Whoever feels like that will be able to power this through. We'll find ways of learning. We can get courses, and that's great. And organizations are doing it, and my organization doing it very well as well. And it's been regimented as well. But to your point, I don't think so. Just that will help. You need to start creating work, putting that work out there, and making everyone feel, "Hey, that's the piece I'm supporting. That's the piece I'm going to stand up and talk about. That's the piece we're going to celebrate. Are you part of it?" Right? And that entire feeling of being left behind, I think that's going to be the biggest force that's going to push everyone forward.
So we end on the note that marketers are insecure and brilliant. So
Curious.
curious. Okay. Thanks a lot, everybody. It was great to have this chat.
Some truly valuable lessons from this conversation. It was great interacting with the panelists on new AI trends of marketing. Thanks for listening to Alt Strategy.